Are you familiar with how Scientology became a religion?
Can you describe to me Tom Cruise's role in Scientology?
Tom Cruise counseled my husband.
In Scientology, they're aliens.
Scientology at its core believes that we are eternal beings, which we are, but that we have multiple lives.
I was homeless and I was trying to get me a job as an extra, and I was standing in the line at Central Casting, and this man came up to me and he said, if you're trying to be an entertainer, we have a program that'll help you. And I signed the contract. It's like a contract. I was like,
From the time that I was 8 years old, I was a member of Scientology. Scientology engages in many of the egregious and horrific behaviors that most fascist states do.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back again and it's about to get mysterious. We recently reacted to a clip of Ryan Garcia telling us about the elites eating. The reason behind why they eat is to make themselves younger or look younger. Now all of a sudden I'm seeing videos of John Travolta, 72-year-old John Travolta, looking at least 30 to 40 years younger than his actual age. I think 40 might be pushing it, but definitely 30 years younger. Now before we delve further into this, I want to ask this question and I want you guys to let me know. Where's Jim Carrey? Where is Jim Carrey? Only about 2.5 months ago, Jim Carrey was in France collecting this award and it didn't look like Jim Carrey. You had the makeup SFX artist claim it was him. That got debunked within minutes. Since then, we haven't heard anything from that Jim Carrey. We haven't seen that Jim Carrey. Bearing in mind, whilst he was in France, he was whining and dining with this Asian lady, getting in and out of cars, remember? The paparazzi snapping at him as he was getting into the SUV and he was wearing his glasses, signing autographs with his wrong hand. Where is that Jim Carrey? Where's he gone? Why has there been no follow-up since that conspiracy? No further interviews, no further appearances, no nothing from that Jim Carrey that we saw. Nothing since then. It's literally just gone quiet and everyone's forgot all about it. Not me. And that's why it makes this a whole lot weirder. Another A-list celebrity in John Travolta looking totally different. I mean, you can see that it's John Travolta, but this guy doesn't look like a 72-year-old John Travolta. I'm pretty sure most people that are hitting that age of 60, 70 are gonna say, well, I want whatever he's drinking. Well, do ya? Do you really want what he's drinking? I don't think you do. So here we have John Travolta in 2018 in comparison to the John Travolta we just saw in 2026. Wow, wow, wow. That's a massive, massive transformation. We're talking about almost 10 years ago. He's looking extremely well at 72 years old. I have to say that something mysterious is happening in Hollywood. Not only do we have this fraudulent Jim Carrey, but we've also got a potential fraudulent John Travolta. That's a crazy transformation, we have to be honest. And this isn't AI, ladies and gentlemen. I know everyone's gonna ask that in the comments. Is it AI? It's potentially AI. I don't think this is AI. This is something else. This is maybe what Ryan Garcia is telling us. I don't know. It's just super weird. It doesn't even look like plastic surgery. Doesn't even look like he's had any type of surgery. If I am being honest, he just looks so much younger. He looks only a few years older than this young woman that he's cuddling up with on the red carpet. Who is this lady? I don't even know who she is. Is that his partner? I don't know, man. Is that what the millions do for you? Or would you say that's what the Scientology community does for you? Am I saying too much? Now, it is rumored that John Travolta, as well as the likes of Tom Cruise, are affiliated or involved in a community called Scientology. Now, I have to be honest at this point, this is not something I'm overly familiar with, but what we are going to do is we're going to dive into a few videos to give us a clearer understanding into what Scientology is and whether the community, the cult, whatever it may be, is responsible for making John Travolta look the way he looks at 72 years old. Because that's the conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen. That's what people are suggesting online. So let's find out. Fasten your seatbelts. Let's get into it.
Are you familiar with how Scientology became a religion? They wanted to become a religion so bad, they basically, the leader of Scientology, whose name is David Miscavige. L. Ron Hubbard started it. He was a science fiction writer. He founded it. And then David Miscavige took over. And L. Ron Hubbard's dying wish was for Scientology to become a religion so they wouldn't be able to pay tax. So what they did was they had literally tens of thousands of their members all file lawsuits against the IRS. And eventually they won. The IRS fucking waved the white flag and said, okay, you guys can become a religion. You guys are tax-free. The documentary is called Going Clear, the Prison of Belief. And basically how they just brainwash all these people into Scientology and they convince them to do whatever they want. Basically, they start out by feed you all these life hacks in the beginning on how to better your life, how to push out all negative influences in your life, and how to become the best version of yourself, like Tony Robbins type shit. And then once you get into it and you start paying the money, then they start letting you into some of the fucking Xenu alien galactic overlord shit.
There was a time when I did not know what Scientology was truly all about. Like, I didn't even know that it was a religion. That's until I took a trip to Los Angeles and I got lured into the Church of Scientology and I found out what it was all about. And it was wild. See, it was like one of my first trips to Los Angeles, my first solo trip to Los Angeles, because I was meeting friends down there and I had my entire trip planned out except for one day. So I was like, you know what? That day I'll just walk around Hollywood and like see all of the landmarks. So that is what I did, and everything was fine. At first, I went to the Walk of Fame. I saw all the stars on the ground. I walked past that famous movie theater that does all the movie premieres. I saw the Hollywood sign. I was just having fun being a tourist. Then fast forward a little bit, I walked past this one building that says Scientology on the front of it in big letters. Now, honestly, the name definitely rang a bell, but I didn't know exactly what bell it was ringing. The building kind of looked like a museum, so I just assumed it was a museum for some sort of science. So that said, when I walk past this building and this dude with a monocle comes out and asks me if I want to come inside and do a free personality test, I was like, hell yeah, free admission into this museum and a personality test? What more could I want? So this dude that looks like he came straight from freaking BioShock, like not only did he have a monocle, he had a gear on his freaking belt, is just like, amazing, I'll take you right to the back. Let me guide you. So this steampunk looking dude walks me through the lobby, which I later find out is the lobby of the Church of Scientology, and he takes me to this back little room office thing and tells me to have a seat. Now, I'm already getting weird vibes at this point, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is definitely not just a museum, but I kind of brush it off, and I'm like, oh, it's probably like an institute as well, or like a university. And I thought I was already too deep in at this point, and I didn't want to be rude and leave, so I sat down for this personality test. Now, at first, the questions were kind of normal, like they were actually about my personality. He'd just be like, so, would you overall say that you're an agreeable person? Then the questions took a little bit of a turn. He was asking things like, can you take orders? Are you obedient? How would you feel if you hunted an animal? Would you feel guilty? But I'm still answering all of his questions, and I'm like 50 or 60 questions in. But then I'm like, wait, how many questions are in this questionnaire? Because I was expecting it to just be short and sweet. So I asked Steampunk Dude, like, how many questions I have left. And this dude will not give me a straight answer. He's just like, oh, you're almost there. And I'm just like, no. How many questions do I have left? Like, I have things to do. And his response was just like, you're doing great. You're almost there. So I'm just looking at him and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm being pretty clear. Anyways, I continue to try to ask him how many questions I have left, and he will not give me an answer. Like, I swear I tried to ask him in 4 different ways, and he would not tell me. So eventually, I just get up out of my chair, and I'm just like, yo, dude, if you don't tell me how many questions I have left, I'm just leaving. And in this one moment, I see this dude break his monotoneness, and he's just like, no, don't leave. You're doing amazing. In that moment, I'm thinking, like, this is weird. So I leave his office and I head towards the lobby, and as I'm heading towards the lobby, this dude is following me and pleading with me. He was just like, we can help you. You would fit so perfectly. And then I just happen to look up and I see this huge picture of Tom Cruise on the wall, and I get more disoriented. I'm just like, where am I? But I didn't have time to think about it because my survival instincts had kicked in, and I was just beelining for the door, and I got to the door and the door was locked. So I kind of lose my cool and I turn around and I yell, unlock the door. And they unlocked the door, and I left. But yeah, scary shit. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I did my research afterwards, and it could have been a lot worse.
If you're someone that is conspiratorial, being locked up in that moment, and this guy's pressuring you to, sign up more or less, I'll be a bit concerned. I'll be a bit worried, trying to get myself out there as soon as possible. I can't lie.
Can you describe to me Tom Cruise's role in Scientology?
Tom Cruise counseled my husband. He was David Miscavige's closest friend. David Miscavige would take Tom Cruise around the headquarters and demand that the staff jump up and say, "Yes, sir, Mr. Cruise," like absolute worship. I would characterize Tom Cruise as a very domineering, controlling person. He could be abusive and he would often lose his temper. One of his staff said that he threw them up against a fridge, yelling and verbally abusive. Tom Cruise definitely received very preferential treatment within Scientology. Shelley Miscavige, David's wife, then ran the project to find Tom Cruise a wife, which resulted in his marriage to Katie Holmes. If you read what Katie Holmes went through to get out of that relationship with her daughter, you're talking celebrities, and she had to escape in the dead of night too.
That's a very interesting point of view on Tom Cruise, someone who has been heavily linked to Scientology, someone who is high up in this cult. And the whole relationship with Katie Holmes is a very interesting deep dive. I'm sure you'll agree.
Scientology is a belief system created by L. Ron Hubbard that does fundamentally believe that we are all immortal spiritual beings called Thetans, that we have native godlike potential, that there is nothing more powerful in the universe than a Thetan. So godlike is, quite literal here. And that through various decisions Thetans have made, they have fallen away from their native godlike power to fallen down to a state where most Thetans aren't even aware that they are Thetans, aren't even aware that they ever have lived before or have these powers. And that Thetans are now in a state where they're trapped in bodies, trapped here on Earth, trapped in this prison of a physical universe, trapped on this prison of a planet. And that only Scientology can restore a Thetan to its native state.
Are these multiple beings? Is there one Thetan inside of me that's trapped in this prison?
Well, the Thetan would be you.
The thing would be me.
The Thetan is you.
But I'm presumably limited in some fundamental way. So this Thetan that is me is limited. So there's 8 billion Thetans on the planet.
There's one primary Thetan animating each body. Later in Scientology, you learn there's actually tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of sick, unconscious, half-dead Thetans stuck to you that are now an additional cause of problems for you.
Sure.
But fundamentally, at the lower levels, the non-confidential levels, there's just one Thetan per body.
You think about it, Thetan does sound like Satan.
See, Stan, there is a reason for people feeling sad and depressed. An alien reason. It all began 75 million years ago. Xenu then released the alien souls, which roamed the Earth aimlessly in a fog of confusion. They attached themselves to all mankind, which still to this day causes all our fears, our confusions, and our problems.
It's a very interesting episode of South Park. I haven't seen that one before. I haven't seen South Park in years, good 20 plus years, I've got to be honest. But I think I'd be interested in seeing this or watching this episode.
In Scientology, they're aliens, and they're space beings that
You're not
come...
supposed to give up this information.
Oh, sorry. No. So that's how I got brought into this conversation. Because of the sectors of Scientology that involve space beings, okay? Yes. from Scientology.
Book,
or whether a man born of a woman is the son of God who died and rose from the dead. I'm not going to compare those and judge whether one of them is more authentic than another, when they're both founded on belief systems. And so in this country, belief systems are protected, and we've all bought into that.
College of Chicago and teach you a little bit about Scientology. We're in the Public Information Center now, and I'm going to show you something that you can do when you walk in. So we have a whole Public Information Center where you can actually watch videos about what Scientology actually is, and I'm going to teach you guys something about the 8 dynamics. In Scientology, we have something called the 8 dynamics. They're the dynamics of existence. A dynamic is basically a thrust towards survival or life, right? So it says life is subdivided into 8 dynamics, meaning urge, drive, or impulse. Each one can be inspected, understood, and harmonized with all others to increase survival. So you have the first dynamic, which is yourself. You have the second dynamic, which is sex and family. You have the third dynamic, which is group survival, like work. You know, you have groups, you have friend groups, maybe sports groups that you're a part of. Then you have the fourth dynamic, which is mankind. Maybe you donate to a charity or you are a humanitarian of some sort. Fifth dynamic is life forms, animals. People have puppies and different animals that make them happy. You know, gardens, things like that. Sixth dynamic is the physical universe. Matter, energy, space, and time. The seventh dynamic is the spiritual dynamic, because you are a spiritual being. And the eighth dynamic is infinity, the supreme being, or God.
Scientology at its core believes that we are eternal beings, which we are, but that we have multiple lives. They believe in past lives. So it's very Eastern witchcraft, Eastern New Age, right? They take from the Indian, the Vedic scriptures, Buddhism, very similar to Buddhism, if you could say what classified. So they believe we're eternal beings, but we keep getting recycled over and over. They don't believe in reincarnation per se. They call it past lives. So you've lived multiple lives going back from ever, and you carry all the trauma of your past lives. So the reason that you hit someone in this life and you have anger is because someone hit you in your past life. And I want you to recall it. And that's a session. They snap their fingers, there's sessions you pay for that.
It's
sometimes
like hypnotizing?
It's similar. It's similar. They put you in something called a revelry, which is like a light hypnotism. They say they're against hypnotism. So if you were to show this interview or talk to a Scientologist who's current, they're going to say everything I'm saying is a lie. I got kicked out of Scientology. That's what they say, right? And I just couldn't do it, right? Just wasn't good enough. I did too many crimes. They're all about crimes and sins, and it's a lot to unpack. So it's a lot. So Scientology at its core believes that we are eternal beings, which we are, but that we have multiple lives. They believe in past lives. So it's very Eastern witchcraft, New Age, right? They take from the Indian, the Vedic scriptures, Buddhism, very similar to Buddhism.
I mean, the part in there where she mentions past lives, you know, you have those conspiracies where they say certain actors and actresses look like people from centuries ago. They get labeled time travelers or people that have been reincarnating. Maybe it's true. Maybe they have been linked to Scientology, hence why they keep reincarnating, but they don't call it reincarnating, as she said. They just call it past lives, and you just carry that trauma through every life you have.
I thought Scientology and everyone involved was cult members, and once you came in, then I couldn't be friends with my family or this or that. None of that is true, by the way. I went down to a church and I sat down and I was like, I want to do something, but you can't have my number, my address, because I don't want you people chasing me down afterwards. And if I leave and I'm not giving you 10% of my money and you can't have my bank accounts. And they looked at me and they were chuckling, and I was like, what? And they were like, that's fine. You tell us what you want or you don't want. If this course works for you, we're happy to help you. If you never want to come back, that's fine too. And so I took my first course. I loved it. And then I did my next and my next and my next. And the next thing you knew, I was an actress in LA and I booked 10 jobs in a row. Like, that's not a coincidence. Like, it's really hard to book a job. I was winning because I understood the communication cycle. There's actually a formula of communication. Before I did this course, I thought communicating just meant talking and listening. No. There's a whole technology around communication, and it blew my mind. So I was able to be a better storyteller and really like do my auditions better. Anyway, I started winning, and I just kept doing the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I just did the next level, the next level, the next level, the next level. And now I am the highest level that is released at this point on the planet. That's that.
She more or less just told us about selling her soul. Selling her soul to who, though? That's the question.
What brought you to Scientology?
Homelessness. I was homeless, and I was trying to get me a job as an extra, and I was standing in the line at Central Casting, and this man came up to me, and he said, if you're trying to be an entertainer, we have a program that'll help you. And I was like, look, man, I'm homeless. I'm trying to get a job. And he was like, oh, you should come down to our center. We can help you. And so then I went down there and went through the whole orientation and stuff. And he was like, you don't have to sleep in your car. You could work here. You could be here at the Church of Scientology. And, we don't have anyone like you. And you're so good with the community. And we're getting ready to open up some places in Inglewood and South Central Los Angeles that you could potentially run and be a part of. I was like, okay. And then I signed the contract. It's like a $1 billion contract. I was like, I ain't gonna let that.
This is another example of someone else, an actress, a legit actress, explaining how she's more or less sold her soul to Scientology.
Whatever. I need a place to sleep, right? And then when they took me to the barracks where I would be sleeping, like when you're in the boot camp portion or whatever, it's bunk beds. I don't do bunk beds. I don't mess with bunk beds. Bunk beds are dangerous. I don't fuck with bunk beds because from when I was in McLaren Hall, there's only if that bunk bed's up in the corner, there's only 2 ways out that bunk bed. And if somebody trying to mess with you, and if there's 2 of them or 3 or more, boom, they block you. You can't get out that bunk bed. Now you got to curl up and take that ass whooping. I'm not doing that. Wow. I don't do bunk beds, right? So when they was like, you gonna sleep here? I was like, I'm not sleeping there. We gonna make a pallet on the floor or something. I ain't sleeping there. I'd rather sleep on the floor. I ain't sleeping there. I ain't sleeping in no bunk bed. They was like, no, you gonna have to sleep in a bunk bed. I was like, I ain't sleeping in a bunk bed. Then they was like, no, you're gonna sleep in this bunk bed. And they left. And I was like, I'm not sleeping in no motherfucking bunk bed. And I was like loud and everything. And it was like just me and like these little white girls with blonde hair. And they were like, oh my God. It's just a bunk bed. I don't do bunk beds. I don't care what they say. I ain't sleeping in no bunk bed. Then they make me get on them can things. These cans.
Oh, tell me about the cans. You're holding the cans.
Yeah, the cans. They call them the cans, and it's supposed to. You hold on to that, and you talk about whatever makes you emotional or whatever. And it's supposed to gauge your energy, and then you keep telling the story over and over and over again, and eventually the energy meter's supposed to read low, and then you good, right? But mine was, I told the story, I was there for 4 or 5 hours telling the same story over and over. I said this why I don't do bunk bed. And it never, the meter was yeah. It's supposed to be over here. I'm like, yeah, I don't do.
That's interesting, boy. What brought her to Scientology, homelessness, and the fact that she wanted to be famous. They offered her that, they promised her that, and they put her through a process, and it got her there.
From the time that I was 8 years old, I was a member of Scientology, an organization that is often referred to as a cult, but is more like a fascist state and cult of personality. I'm not going to bore you with the details, but Scientology engages in many of the egregious and horrific behaviors that most fascist states do. Scientologists are imprisoned and held against their will, families separated. Scientology's global intelligence agency engages in transnational repression of its members and beyond. Scientology engages in renditions and kidnappings. Journalists and advocates for victims face harassment and surveillance simply for doing their jobs. Scientology also engages in multi-generational punishment. Now, while all this is happening, the U.S. government and many other governments worldwide do nothing to stop it. Judges do nothing to stop it. Major institutions do nothing to stop it. Scientology even managed to harass and bully its way into being granted tax-exempt status by the IRS. Now, that tax-exempt status has allowed Scientology to amass billions of dollars in cash and real estate. The tax-exempt status has also given Scientology a cloak of protection in U.S. courts, which has allowed it to act with impunity. Scientology is controlled by an autocratic leader who micromanages everything, is physically and psychologically abusive, psychopathic, petty, who has made his own family members disappear when they got on his wrong side. He has also weaponized Twitter and other social media platforms against his perceived enemies.
That was extremely interesting. For those that don't know who this is a famous actress. I used to watch this lady early mornings, Channel 4, comedy show. I can't remember what it was. Is it Queen of the South, King of the South? This is Leah Remini, famous actress from a young age, involved in Scientology. And she there explaining exactly what it is and how dark it is. what happens behind the scenes, how they are pulling the strings more or less and getting away with whatever they want to get away with. It's their own community, their own world, and no one can tell them what to do. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a very interesting perspective and an insight into Scientology. We started on John Travolta, someone who is heavily involved in Scientology. The fact that he looks 30 years younger than his current age. We have various other celebrities involved in Scientology, including the likes of Tiffany Haddish, and she told us exactly the process she had to go through in order to get to where she's at today. And that literally right there, ladies and gentlemen, tells us all we need to know. What I need from you right now is just to comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on John Travolta. Let me know your thoughts on Jim Carrey. Where is he? But also let me know your thoughts on Scientology. Don't hesitate. Leave all your thoughts, all your comments, and all your opinions down below. Hit that like button. Turn your notification bells on so you don't miss out on future videos. Plenty more uploads en route, so don't go anywhere. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one.